DreAllDay.com.
You're now tuned in to the show where you learn the discipline to show up day after day to do the work, the confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there, even when the success you've expected to achieve has yet to be achieved. And on top of all this, you get a huge dose of personal initiative, which is the go-getter energy that moves any one of us, including yourself, to go and make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. Then we put all this together into one bundle, one package, one mindset, one method, one philosophy, one framework. We wrote a book on the topic, and you have this daily masterclass. You see how many episodes we got here? Called Work on Your Game. My name is Dre Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day, and welcome to the show. And today's topic is dealing with friction. And the way we're talking friction here is the difference between your plans and reality. The difference between what you wanted to happen and what did or what is actually happening. And before we get any further into this, I'll tell you that I have a open text line where you can send me a text message and let me know. I want you to text me specifically what has been the most valuable thing that resonated with you from today's episode once we get into it. And that number is 305-384-6894. Again, text me most valuable thing you got from today's episode, 305-384-6894. So again, the topic is dealing with friction, the difference between your plans, your expectations, and reality, what is actually going on. Let's get straight to the points. Number one, assess the friction. The most important thing you can do when you realize that there is friction, that you had a certain expectation and whatever is going on is not quite meeting the expectation or is not matching the expectation, assess what is going on. Assess the fact, acknowledge the fact that there is friction going on. Here's what you should absolutely not do. This is what a lot of people are doing, or I see them doing, and this is a faux pas. Do not commit this error. Do not ignore the friction. Do not act like the friction is not happening. Do not hope that the friction goes away. Many people do this with any form of friction in their lives, and you know what the negative outcome is when you ignore friction? Is that nothing ever changes. Because if there's a conflict between what you expected and what's happening, and then you just leave it at that and you don't do anything about it, well, what's going to happen? You're going to continue to have conflicts. Things are going to continue to not match your expectations. And I'm assuming that you have positive, high expectations for yourself. And if the reality is not matching it, at least acknowledge that the reality is not matching it. So then maybe, just maybe, you could do something about it. But if you ignore it, then it's pretty much just going to go whatever direction that it wants to go, because nobody's doing anything, nobody's saying anything. Then it's just going to keep going wherever it wants to go. Many people make this mistake over and over again in life. Actually, they make the mistake one time and then they just keep repeating it. They're not making it over and over. They just make it once and then everything just goes wherever it wants to go, and that's pretty much the end of the game. Those are not the type of people who listen to this show, however. So we're talking about some outsiders. So we're not talking about the people here. Engage with friction when you realize that there is friction and find out what is actually going on. This means addressing small issues before they become big issues. For example, as an athlete, another example is if you have some small nagging injury in your body, it doesn't mean you need to retire or not play in the next game, but you should reach out to the team doctor or a physical therapist or to your trainer or whoever it is that helps you with your body and let them know what is that small nagging pain that you've been having and deal with it before it becomes a big injury that maybe will cost you some games or cost you your career or cost you a contract or cost you a chance to play in the big match that's coming up next weekend. So dealing with the small things before they become big things. When you notice that there is friction, you got to do something about it. When I was playing basketball, this is probably maybe in the middle of my career, maybe 2009, 2010-ish, around that time, I noted that I was starting to feel some small pains in my body, some small aches and pains in my body that I had never felt before. And I was in really good shape. I had six-pack abs, and I like being on the beach with no shirt on and getting the attention for doing it. And I could run fast and I could jump high, and I'm a professional athlete. But then I told my trainer, Maria, about these little things that were happening, these little tweaks that I was starting to feel on my body. And she started helping me with it. She started teaching me how to do corrective exercises and regenerative exercises, things that could help my body, help the small muscles that I hadn't really been working on, because I've been doing all these compound lifts and working on the big muscles, which is what helps you run fast and jump high. But I didn't realize that the small muscles needed to be worked as well, because they were the stabilizers. She helped me with that, but I had to address it. Had I not told her how I was feeling, nobody would have known, because I felt it on the inside. You couldn't see it on the outside, but but I could feel it on the inside. And because I addressed that friction, we were able to do something about it. And I'm 100% sure addressing those things helped prolong my career. Had I not done that, I would have been done and stopped playing. I would have been done as an athlete, period. Even nowadays, doing things like running or going to like boxing training or any of those things, I wouldn't be able to do now had I not addressed those issues, that friction over 10 years ago. Because I was willing to engage the friction, we could do something about it. But many times in life, little things come up, people completely ignore them, just hoping that they go away or just trying to pretend that they're not happening unconsciously. And then they just get bigger and bigger and bigger. When they do finally get acknowledged, they'll go away. But you must acknowledge it. In the business world, for example, if you have an employee who makes a small error in doing the work and you notice it, but you don't say anything and you don't correct them or you don't do anything about that error that you notice, well, pretty soon that employee is going to keep making other errors, and maybe other employees are going to mimic the same error that the first employee made. And now, before you know it, your whole team is making the same mistake over and over again, and it's become an accepted thing. Now it's a monster. All right. When it was a little tiny thing, you could have addressed it, but now it's become a monster. Now you can't do anything about it, and now your business is going in the wrong direction because you didn't address the friction when it happened. Do not ignore friction. When you notice it, understand that you must do something about it. Even if you don't know what to do about it, acknowledge that there is something there, that something needs to be done. Even if you need to go do some research, you need to go make some phone calls, you need to go find somebody, something has to be done. When this happened back in maybe November of 2020, I was running and I noticed that my knee I was starting to feel a tweak in my knee. I hadn't felt it before. And I've done a lot of running since I stopped playing ball. I ran 2 marathons. I've done a half marathon race, and I've run that distance that wasn't an official race hundreds, maybe even thousands of times, at least 10K or more, literally thousands of times over the last 5+ years. But I never felt this kind of feeling that I was feeling in my knee. So I knew I needed to do something. So I reached out to my trainer. I even went and seen a doctor, a guy who's like a team physician for the Miami Heat, saw him, saw what he had to say, listened to what this person had to say, got a couple different opinions, then reached out to a guy I knew as a physical therapist, my guy Brian down here in South Florida. He showed me some corrective exercises that I could do that helped it feel better. And lo and behold, he was right. It worked out. But the reason that it worked out is because I addressed the friction. No one from the outside looking in would have looked at me and said, "Hey, Dre, maybe something's wrong with you." You couldn't have seen it. I had to notice the friction, be willing to engage with the friction, and therefore I was capable, I was equipped to do something about the friction only because I addressed it. And at first I had no idea what it was or what to do about it. But once I addressed it and acknowledged it, then I could handle it. Point number 2. Today's topic is how to deal with friction in your life. Plan and continue to make adjustments. So once you notice that there's some kind of friction, your goal, hopefully, is that you want to reduce the friction, right? You want to do something about that friction so things can be smooth again. And at the same time, understanding that if you're a human being, if you're an athlete, your body was not designed to do the things that we put our bodies through as athletes, meaning there's going to be some kind of friction that comes up every now and then, no matter what. Any of you who has either played a professional sport or you know someone who does or you watch professional sports, if you listen to athletes talk about how they take care of their bodies, you'll hear athletes say all the time, no athlete is in 100% tip-top shape once you get about 25% into the season. I don't care if we're talking baseball, hockey, football, basketball, track, gymnastics. Every athlete has some kind of tweaks or some minor ache and pain, at least in the least, they have that. No matter what sport you're playing. Why? Because again, our bodies are not made for that. So there's always some type of friction. And this is why teams employ full-time trainers and full-time physical therapists, because their very job is addressing these inevitable friction points that every player on that team is going to have. Even the guys who don't play a lot, they have friction because they're in practice every single day. This is just part of the game. So understanding that since there will always be friction, when you're in business, there's always friction. One of the favorite podcasts that I listen to, I talked about in an episode, I believe it was 1638. Let me pull up and tell you what episode that was. My favorite podcast is 1637 and 1638, parts 1 and 2. I mentioned a podcast called Momentum by Alex Sharfin. One of the things that he talks about in his philosophy is that when you're in business, something's always going to be broken. For example, a simple example that he gives is if you get really good at generating leads to your business, then you may have the problem of how do I convert these leads? If you get really good at converting leads, now you have all these customers and clients. Now you have an issue of how do I deliver to these people? You get really good at delivering. Now you may have an issue of how do I upsell these people and get them to buy something else? So there will always be something that you need to get better at in your business. Your business will never be at 100% on all cylinders at the same time. And if it is, it'll last about 5 minutes and then something's gonna be broken all over again. This is just the game, people. Any of you who's in a relationship, any of you have friends, any of you do anything, there is always something that could be done, needs to be done, something that needs to be fixed. So since friction will be happening all the time, your job is to plan and continually make adjustments. Your goal, of course, is to reduce the friction as much as you can and keep things as smooth as you can keep them, but there's always going to be something. So you adjust things as you go along, you assess the results of the changes that you make, then you adjust again, then you adjust again. Many people, what they do conversely, which is what you should not do, is they see friction, they feel friction, they note the friction, and then they train themselves to just learn to live with it. All right, there's a pain in my knee when I'm running, so you know what? I'm not gonna call anybody. I'm just grit my way through the pain in my knee, and I'm gonna just hope that it goes away, or I'm gonna just say, you know, I'm just grinding. I'm gonna just push through this. No, do not do that. All right, acknowledge that there's friction, find out what's going on and see what you can do about it. Do not just condition yourself to live with friction of things not going the way that you expect them to go. All right. Move on the friction when you see it, find out what you can improve, and then make your adjustments. All right. This is an ongoing process. This is the game in business. In business, you can't shut your business down every time there's friction, and you can't allow the friction to just keep going. If you're getting 10 customer service complaints a day, something ain't right. Now, depending on how many customers you have. Maybe if you're Amazon, 10 might be a great day. But if you're a smaller business doing 100 transactions a day, you shouldn't be getting 10 customer service complaints. You need to do something about that friction. All right. Don't say, well, hey, it's 90% aren't complaining. No. Fix that friction. Now, when you fix that friction, maybe that will lead to another problem. Another problem will spring up. Well, you got to address that. Then another thing will spring up. You have to address that. This is the game, folks. This is what you signed up for. You play basketball, you might need to lift some weights so you can get stronger. You lift weights to get stronger, maybe your legs might feel a little bit more tired because now they're carrying around a little bit more weight. Okay, now you got to do some things to get your legs a little bit stronger. Now you're doing a little bit more cardio. Now you might need a little bit more food, or you might need to change your diet to support the body that you built. Now you might need to get yourself a different trainer or change your training schedule. Now you got all these different adjustments that you have to make. When you make this adjustment, then that leads to another adjustment necessary. Then another one, then another one, then another one. This is all part of the game, people. Anytime that you're in the game, there will always be something to fix. There will always be something to change. There will always be something to adjust. Don't get in the game if you think that it just gets to a certain point that you don't have to do anything else. Friction is an ongoing thing that you should expect at all times. Point number 3. The topic, once again, is how to deal with friction in life. Make executive decisions. The dictionary definition of friction, now I gave you the work on your game definition, which is of friction at the beginning, which is the difference between your expectations and reality, what's actually happening. But the definition in the dictionary of friction is the following, quote, the resistance that one surface or object encounters when moving over another, close quote. Friction is when there is conflict between one thing, meaning possibly your expectations, and another thing in your life, meaning possibly the reality, what's actually happening. And you, as the CEO and the sole proprietor of You Incorporated, and yes, you are the only owner of your business, and yes, you are the CEO of your company. Even if you don't have a job right now and not a dollar to your name, you are still a CEO of your business, and you're the owner of that business who might not be generating any revenue. You are the owner. Understand something. It is your job to address any matters or conflict that is happening in your house. That is your job as a CEO. The buck starts with you and it stops with you. Even though maybe other people may be involved, you make the final set. You make the final call. You make executive decisions. Executive decision means your decision is final, and that's what it is. That's what it means when I say executive decision. All right, there's no second guessing in executive decision. There's no vetoing an executive decision. That means it's happening, and that's what it is, and this is the way it is going. It is your job to address these matters because they're in your house, and then you get them settled via many ways you can get them settled. I'll give you some options. You can change things around to fix this friction. You can remove some things to fix friction. You can add in some things to address friction. You can have certain communications. Let people know, hey, this is what's happening. This is how it's going. This is why it's going that way. And this is the way it is going to be. Maybe other people need to make adjustments. Maybe other people need to change, make a removal or make an addition. Maybe it's understanding. Maybe it's letting people know, hey, some changes have happened on the outside, some external changes that have led us to now we need to have a different understanding of the way that we're doing things and why we're doing them, because we can't control these externalities. That also can be part of your communication. So you see how all these things go together. And you as the CEO, you as the sole proprietor, all this is your job. All of this is your responsibility. Now, that doesn't mean you had to do it all, but you are responsible for it all. Meaning, if something needs to be changed, removed, added, communicated, or understood, maybe somebody else will carry it out, but you're the one who's responsible for the fact that it occurred. And if it doesn't occur, you're the one responsible for that too. Why? Because you're the CEO. That's the job you signed up for when you were given life. You signed up as the CEO of your company. And you cannot resign from this position. Actually, you could resign from this position, but I would advise strongly against it, because you won't like what happens, because you're still gonna be working there whether you're the CEO or not. You follow what I'm saying? You don't want somebody else running your business of your life. That don't make any sense. Recapping today's class, which is dealing with friction, defined as the difference between your plans and what actually happens, also known as reality. Number one, assess the friction. Do not ignore the fact that there's friction. Do not act like the friction is not happening. Do not hope that it goes away. This is what many people do with any form of friction in their lives. And as a result of doing that, nothing changes. Engage with the friction. Find out what's actually going on. Do not ignore it. Number two, plan and continue to make adjustments, understanding that there will always be friction no matter what you do, because this is just life. We're humans. We are imperfect creatures. And there's always going to be something going on. If you want everything to be perfect and stay the same all the time, become a robot, but I don't think that's possible, at least not with today's technology. Many people see friction and train themselves to learn to live with the friction, just accepting it blindly. Do not do this. Move on the friction. When you see it, do something about it. Find out what you can improve. This is an ongoing process in business, ongoing in sports, ongoing in life. And number three, make executive decisions. The dictionary defines friction as the resistance that one surface or object encounters when moving over another. Friction is when there is conflict between one thing and another in your life. Since you are the CEO and sole proprietor of You Incorporated, your life, it is your job to address any matters or conflicts happening in your house, get them settled via making changes, removing things, making additions, communications, and understanding. Even if someone else is delegated to do those things, you're responsible for what they do or do not do, because you are the CEO of your company. Do not defer that job, because if you do, somebody else is going to be running your company and you still got to live there, you still got to work there. That's not an outcome that you want. All that said, if you have not yet claimed your free copy of my book, The Mirror of Motivation, go to mirrorofmotivation.com. That's mirrorofmotivation.com right now. That book is going to give you the frameworks to ask yourself and answer the following question: who do I need to be? You already know what you need to do. You already know what you want to have. This book is going to help you answer the question who you need to be, so you can start actually doing what you need to do the right way and getting the results that you really want to have in your life. I'll give you that book for free. All you do is cover the shipping. Go to mirrorofmotivation.com. And while you're doing that, after you finish claiming a copy of that book, send me a text and let me know the best point or the best thing you heard me say today that really resonated and landed with you. My text number is 305-384-6894. 305-384-6894. Work on your game. Dre all day.